Very good. Good evening. There are still seats closer down front. If anybody that's standing would like to come down, we've got plenty of room here in the middle. Jamie, is there anybody that still needs to make their way in? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Craig Carrington. I'm Chief of Planning for the Nashville District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I'm going to moderate tonight's discussion and want to thank you all for coming out. Before I do start, I would ask Pastor Brown, if he wouldn't mind, please come and do an opening prayer for us.
Now, before we pray, I want to go ahead and preempt and answer probably the single most important question any of you will ask tonight. The bathrooms are right out that way. You follow right out there. There's a hallway. Go down it. Turn to your right. I promise you can't miss them. But guys, it's so thrilling to see each of you here, and we're honored to host, and we're honored that so many of the organizations represented would come out and let us hear from them and also be heard by us. So let's pray. Lord God, thank you. Thank you for this moment. And Lord God, we thank you for the many beautiful moments that have led up to this, all the things we've seen that we can praise you for, of this community coming together and just suffering together, meeting needs together. We thank you for the many who have stepped in from outside our community, caring about Humphreys County. And Lord God, though we still hurt, though we still rebuild and try to put back together the pieces of what remains, Lord God, we thank you for the grace you've shown. We thank you for the mercy you give. We thank you for who you are, what you've done for us on the cross, what you've done for us through this, and what you yet will do to show forth your glory and your goodness. Lord, bless this night. May it be a night full of peace, a night where indeed people can hear answers to questions they've wondered and hear where we're going from here, but also be heard. And Lord God, we just thank you so much for this opportunity. In Jesus' name, we pray all these things. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. I wanted to, share what we have planned to share with you all tonight and kind of have some organization to it so that everybody that would like to has a chance to share or ask a question. So the rough agenda for tonight is we do have a panel here. We're going to go through and have them introduce themselves and the agencies they're from, and then give some opening comments about some of the activities that their agencies have been involved in. And then from that go to question and answers for you all. We do have two gentlemen here with microphones so that we'll have them walk around. As you have a question, please raise your hand and they'll find you and give you the microphone so that everybody can hear the question, including the panel. Please, if you would, if you know which agency that you're directing your question to, if you could share that so that panel member will know that the question is directed to them. We are planning to go to 8 o'clock. We do have an endpoint at 8 p.m. this evening. Because of that, and because we have so many people here that we want to make sure get heard, we'd like, if we could, to limit your question to 2 minutes, if possible, just to allow enough time for everyone to have an opportunity to speak. If there's anyone here that doesn't feel comfortable expressing their question or saying it out loud, we do have comment cards in the back. If you weren't told when you were coming in that was an option, please feel free to either raise your hand and we can get you a card, or return to the back and get a card. It's a 3x5 card, and you can just write your question on there, and then we can read it aloud for everybody. Let's see. If we do not know the answer to your question tonight, and there will be some questions you have that we just simply don't know the answer to, but if it is a question that a particular agency has the ability to answer, but just not tonight, we can take down that comment and try to get back with you at a later point. Let's see. Also, some of the information that people have been curious about are some of the conditions of some of the bridge crossings that are still in various forms of disrepair. We do have some maps in the entry that TDOT has brought. It is both a map and a list available for you to take with you of those bridges, and it gives you a little bit more information about the agency and the state of that. Mr. Shay Deason, engineer with TDOT, will be in the back if you have questions or would like to have some explanation of what this material is. Let's see. With that, I'd like to just start and have the panel introduce themselves. I would like to recognize and thank both Mayor Frazier and Executive Wallace. They have worked very hard to make sure that these panelists are here for you. They know that you have a lot of questions and have really worked hard to make sure that they got all of the organizations feasible here tonight to try to address some of your questions. Again, we may not have every answer for you, but we'll try it the best we can and see if we can follow up either directly or through the city. So if I could, Mayor Frazier.
Well, welcome everyone. I was hoping for a good turnout tonight, and the community has given me what I wanted to see. This tells me there is a lot of interest in this community with our flooding issues. We want to thank the church tonight for providing the facilities tonight, and Lester Collier and the other guys that are up in the sound booth providing us with good sound tonight. Appreciate also the various state and federal agencies that are represented here tonight, and just that these folks came down here on a Friday night to meet with this community speaks very highly of these individuals. You know, they probably had a lot of places they had rather been tonight than here, but they are here with us, and I appreciate them being here. I think that speaks to what kind of person they are, and also speaks to the concern and interest that they have in our flooding issues. Scene was totally different here 8 months ago tonight. We've come a long way in that 8 months. Long-term recovery has kicked in, and we're starting to see some progress in some areas, and we've got to continue on that path. We've got to keep on getting after it. I think tonight what we all want in this room is we want a safe community. We want a community where we can go to bed at night and not worry about the flood waters coming in on us. We don't want to worry about when one of the Nashville TV stations puts out a flash flood warning, or we're going to have a heavy rainfall event and people go into panic mode. We want a community where we don't have to worry about that and feel safe. I'm very proud of our community, our county as a whole, how we have all come together this last 8 months, how everyone's kicked in and done their part to help each other. And I truly believe if we continue to work with our state and our federal partners, we're going to get a handle on this. But we got to have patience. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next month. These studies take time to complete, and we've got to be patient while that goes on, but I feel like we're in good hands. If you need anything while you're here in the church tonight, let me know, or any of the other church members, and we'll be happy to accommodate you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I echo Mayor Frazier's comments as they relate to what this says about our community. We all have a vested interest in the survival of Waverly and the county as a whole. We've all been touched, but we're not alone. And I think the assemblage here on the stage tonight demonstrates that. These folks to my right are not emissaries from some distant organization that has just a passing interest in what happens down here in our community and communities around the state. They're invested in this as much as we are, and I think that's manifest by their willingness to come out here tonight and stand and answer questions. I hope that we can all get answers that we need clearer vision of where we're going and accelerate that process. And with that, I'll stop and hand it over to Commissioner Sauer.
I think we'll probably start with Colonel first, is that right?
Can you hear me? I'm Colonel Joe Saul. I'm the commander for the Nashville District, U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I just want to say how honored I am to be here tonight. And I feel at home. I'm the son of a preacher man, and we got a packed house, so he would be happy. But I got to meet a number of you starting back in August, and really have come to respect the folks here in Waverly in this county. I want to thank both Mayors Wallace and Frazier for putting us together tonight, but also for continuing to drive for solutions. And then recognize Congressman Green, his field director Sam Nenow is here, and I'd like to give you an opportunity to address before I get into our study, if that's okay with you. Here.
Thank you, Colonel. I appreciate that. Good to see everyone this evening. I'm going to go over here, but good to see so many familiar faces too. And as mayors have said too, thank you for coming out on a Friday night, to yourselves too. 8 months ago, don't need to remind anyone, everyone's life was changed in some form or fashion. Whether you were injured or knew or had a family member that was injured, or we all knew someone that was affected by this. This is something that our office has been paying close attention to, and it's been top of our mind, and Congressman Green in particular. He really wanted to be here tonight himself personally. Fortunately, he had some obligations that he just couldn't get out of, but he did want to be here. And to give an example, he actually spoke with the head of the Corps of Engineers for the United States and told them, say, hey, we need to solve this issue and not just have a temporary fix, but we need to have a long-term solution so we can prevent this long-term damage too. I know everyone up here, Colonel Saul, has been fantastic to work with the Corps, and TDEC and TEMA, and obviously County Executive Wallace and Mayor Frazier. They've been putting in a lot of work, and I know I'm excited personally for them to tell you everything that's been going on behind the scenes. So just thank you again for everyone being here. And I do want to recognize Senator Blackburn's field rep also is here today too, and Representative Jay Reedy, who's been doing a lot on the state level for you guys. Senator Kerry Roberts told me he would like to be here today too, but he unfortunately had a family obligation that kept him from being here. But I know for Representative Reedy and Senator Roberts too, their door is always open for you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So I thought, for me, it's important as we have some agencies represented here, just to introduce it that way. There is what I would say healthy pressure on all of us to deliver, and that's coming straight from the top, especially in my case, as he said, when he called General Spellman, and a good conversation. And so I'm excited to be here. It's been a long time coming, but a lot of work has been going into tonight. And so I really hope to be able to leave tonight with providing you what direction it is we're going in, enough detail on the studies and what we're doing, and then give an opportunity to hear back from you, and then we take that home with us and move forward. But I'm especially excited after working with TEMA and TDEC, especially here with Commissioner Sawyers and Director Sheehan, on this task force that they'll introduce, and a task force that the goal is taking all our different capabilities and layering the experience, pulling in the local community representatives to find solutions. One of our concerns with all of these types of events is we're never fast enough, and we never can do enough by ourselves. And General Spellman has 4 priorities, and one of them is partnership, because he says, and he reminds me, we can't do it by ourselves. We don't have the authorities, we don't have the funding, and we don't have all the experience to do it ourselves. And so this really has given me a lot of hope, optimism, and I think is encouraging. Specifically, what the Corps of Engineers has been doing since August. We initially started in the response, working with FEMA, and then conducting high water survey. The high water marking is something that our engineers do. They come out into the field and they mark all the different locations that there's high water. And what this does is, as we get into our modeling, which I'll talk a little bit about, it enables them to validate the data. And so we can overlay stuff. I thought it would be much easier, to be honest with you, myself, that you just take topography, throw some water on it, and we'd be able to model it. It really, that data helps validate soil, what the soil is doing, what the buildings, what the structures are doing, and how that water really impacts and moves through. So we have a realistic picture of what happened. And that's the study that we were able to get full federal funding for here in Waverly. And that study will look at the Trace Creek, will provide that hydrology modeling. And then as part of this task force, we're working that incrementally into deliver some objectives earlier. So what I'm saying is that model we expect to be done late this summer, mid to late summer. And then we'll continue to look at what are the best options, what are viable, whether it's the best engineering solutions, early warning devices placement for gauges, anything that we can do in a manner in which, as we work this through the task force, is affordable, is something that is actually valuable, and that we can do in a timely enough manner to have a real impact here. The thing that really concerns all of us with events such as this, it's a historic event, and it really was. We looked at this event in different places across the state of Tennessee, in my district, in other states, and it's catastrophic wherever it goes. It was a historic event. What that event does in different structures, different topography, here, as you well know, more than anybody, the Trace Creek it's going to move fast, whatever happens. And so being able to look at what would be the downstream impacts of anything that we do. What's the best engineering solution? Because I immediately we talked some of this with the congressman and others. You know, what's the right depth for this? What's the right width? Where? And in talking with the engineers, this is what should come out of that study, is what these structures are doing to the creek, what the depth is doing to the creek. Is there a better way to convey or retain water? And so I'm excited to be able to go through that. The full study it's a 2-year study, but I was told to finish it in 18 months. And I passed that to Craig Harrington, our Chief of Plans, who you met earlier, and we are on track to do that, and we will do that. And so we'll be done this time next year, a little after, in the summer of '23, with a final report, which will feed all that into you. It'll be a public report, and it'll be fed into what we do with the task force. Trace Creek is the scope of this study. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
No, currently we're looking at modeling Trace Creek, and Hurricane Creek was not part of that.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So
Yes, and just there will be plenty of time for questions if you'd like to hold those until we get the microphone out where everybody could hear the questions.
It's probably an indication that I've gone on long enough. I'll pass the mic to Director Sheehan now with TEMA, and just close right now pending questions. But just to tell you thanks again, to tell you my district lives in this community, so this is personal to us. And while we're a federal agency, we live here, and this impacted my employees as it impacted you. And there's a commitment here to carry this through. And thanks for giving us this opportunity tonight.
Thank you, Colonel. My name is Patrick Sheen. I'm the director of the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency. I'll just start by saying I'm still incredibly heartbroken at the loss and the devastation that happened here in Waverly. Waverly has a special place in everybody that works for TEMA's heart. Yes, sir. I'm with the state of Tennessee, sir. All right, sir.
If we, sir, if we could. Sir, if we could, we're going to pass the microphone around and there'll be plenty of time for questions. We'd like everybody to have the opportunity to ask that question.
I'm not with the Department of Transportation, though, sir. I think we have someone here that can. We'll make sure we have someone with the Department of Transportation speak with you. If not today, then soon, sir. My agency is really engaged with helping communities to mitigate and conduct planning, and I do want to applaud the county for adopting the National Flood Insurance Program and for working with us on near-term and long-term recovery and mitigation solutions to help keep your community safe and resilient. I've had men and women working here since the flood, and I've personally been here a number of times to work with the mayor and executive and sheriff and the incident command team, the incident management team, and we'll just continue working to support you as we can. And I'll turn it over to Commissioner Salyers.
Okay, whoa, yeah, that works, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm David Salyers. I'm Commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation. Certainly, I'd just like to say a huge thanks, really a thanks to Congressman Green for inviting us here through the Colonel and holding us accountable, you know, to work with the community collaboratively to find some solutions. Always great to see Chairman Reedy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your work in the Capitol. But just thinking back when I came down to meet with the mayor and Executive Wallace in February, one of the things that we'd really talked about is bringing the community together, working with the community, and sharing information, provide an update on the things that we are doing and the things that we're going to be doing. So I'm glad we're doing that tonight. You know, I commit to you that we'll be back more often to do this more. And as I really think about, you know, this historic event with my two colleagues up here that we're working very closely with, it's a tough event. It's hard to find words for that, but you know, you talk about historic, unprecedented, once in a lifetime event, and they just almost seem to lose meaning. But you know, we and really the you that's in the audience tonight have been through that, and you know they still have meanings. But you've come through it, made commitments to clean up, to rebuild, to stick it out, and to come back stronger to the extent that we can. So I can't fully appreciate what you've been through, but I can tell you that I'm very, very committed to solutions for this community, viable solutions that are based on sound engineering, scientific principles, you know, within the law. You know, my training is I'm a geologist and an engineer. And for the last 25 years or so of my life, I have worked in, you know, flood risk reduction, flood management type projects. You know, I've, you know, now for the past 3.5 years, I have been the commissioner of the Department of Environment Conservation. We've got some really talented folks. You have the world's premier engineering organization up here. These folks are really good. They are really sharp. Director Sheen with TEMA is not only a leader within the state of Tennessee, but at the national level with FEMA. We have a great team. And one of the things that, I'm going to try to really focus on is what is effective and what's going to work when it comes to flood risk reduction. If one of the things that you're going to learn from me over the next few months, I think, and hopefully we get to talk, I'm very open, very transparent. I'm going to be truthful with you. Sometimes when you don't agree with, what I think the truth may be on a particular project and how to solve something. And this is such a beautiful area. I was riding in with one of my buddies from TDEC this evening. It's just so beautiful. We were just commenting on how it is. But it's a difficult location when you really look at all the factors that come into play around finding solutions that are economically viable. And one of the things that I'm really going to stick with is we are committed to being solutions oriented. We're not here to play blame games or do anything like that. We're going to stay focused on those particular solutions. And one of the things that we have to know and that we have to recognize when it really comes to collaborations and partnerships, in particular in this case, the solutions are going to be expensive. Some of them are going to be tough. And, we have to pool our resources and other resources. We have the Department of Education up here with us tonight, who has a little good news for us in a bit. So, but we've, we have learned to work together. When TEMA gets money through FEMA, when the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has funds appropriated by Congress, when the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development gets funds from HUD, and when TDOT gets money that's going to be coming down here pretty soon through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So there's a lot of. Well, I'll take that as a compliment, sir. Thank you very much. So, and I wish there was a single silver bullet for the solution. There's not going to be one, but there are some things that we can do in the interim, and I'm thrilled that the mayor and the executive are going to be meeting, I think, within the next couple of weeks with an engineering consulting firm to look at a early warning system that can give feedback to folks that want to sign up for that. So we're excited about that. So we're here to listen. We're here to see what you have to do, and we'll try to answer the questions the best that we can. But I will say that we're going to need those studies and that modeling to do the work and to help this community make the right decisions. Let's be clear about that. We can't decide things for the community. In the end, they're going to be community decisions and how we want to go forward. So with that, I'll turn it back to.
Yes, if we could, Ms. Gordon with Department of Education, give an update.
Good evening. My name is Shannon Gordon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the Tennessee Department of Education. And we've had the opportunity this afternoon to already start work with the school district to try to close the gap between the revenues that have been generated through insurance, through FEMA. I'm proud to announce under the leadership of Representative Reedy that the legislature yesterday passed their annual budget. That budget included a $20 billion allocation specifically to ensure that the resources were available to cover the gap, to finish the reconstruction of the schools, as well as to provide some resources to make sure that the schools have been gracious enough to host additional students during this time. Also receive some resources and support as we move forward. We've also been able to, as of last week, secure the additional funding to ensure we could cover the costs of the bus fleet replacement. So those new buses are scheduled to drive into town mid-July, and so we're super excited about that. So we want you to know, and for Commissioner Schwinn, that we're here to support and to help. We're not going anywhere. We want to make sure our students and our staff and our families are still getting a quality education as we work through the challenges we're talking through tonight. And we're just excited to be a partner with you on this journey.
So I'm the only thing keeping us from question and answer. I think I'll be very brief. So my name is Ben Price. I'm Assistant Chief Engineer for Operations at the Tennessee Department of Transportation. And from the initial response and all the projects that are listed on the map and the key that you received outside, we are committed to working here. We're the one agency that gets to benefit residents every day of the year in some way or another. And we're glad to have this, crowd turnout. Some very specific questions we will not be able to answer tonight. The blue section at the bottom of the key are sponsored projects from the county and their consultant engineer, Banesh. So I'll have less information on those than any of them. Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Price. Thank you. At this time, we would like to do questions and answers. We would like to try to do as, I see the hands are already up. We'd like to bring the microphone to you. We'd like the questions, if there are specific questions you've got, we'll try the best we can to answer those. There may be some questions that are specific to your property or some action that you're asking about that we may not be able to answer tonight, but we'll do our best. So we'll start here. Mr. James?
Who is in charge of the creeks?
So
That's what I want to know, because the creeks need to be cleaned out. The trees are so huge that they block the bridges, and the bridges that they're trying to put in on our place, they're not going to work because they're going to have the same problem, and it's going to flood again, and nobody's listening. They think that we're stupid or something. We're not. We understand what the problems are, and we need help.
So if I could clarify your question, when on the who owns the creeks, are you?
No, I'm saying, who cleans the creeks out? Because senior citizens are not able to do that.
All right, if we could try to address them as they come. So first, when it comes to cleaning out the creeks, is there anybody on the panel? I don't know if either the city or the county. I'm not aware that a state agency would have a role in the actual removal. I don't know if Mayor Wallace or Mr. Fraser, if y'all have any.
Yeah, if we could we just take a couple more questions and sort of kind of get the context of that? I know, I hear that, I've heard that from some others, but take a few other questions and maybe we can.
Okay.
I've got pictures to show you, you won't believe.
So is there anybody else that has a question related to either the creek clean out? Ma'am, you had your hand up first. Is it?
I have a question here. I took all the money FEMA gave me to buy me a house. And I bought a trailer. Then I get on there and put it on a piece of land. And the county inspector tells me that I can't do nothing with my place, that I just pretty much lost everything. What's County, they said they can do this and do this and do this. Y'all done got all this money for this and this and this, but what y'all gonna do for us? That nobody can do anything. Y'all make me live in apartments in Dixon now that I walk around when it rains and it floods me and it scares me. But y'all ain't gonna do nothing. Y'all just make me, all my money just got flushed down the drain. Y'all just took right back away from me. What y'all gonna do about that?
If we could.
We want some answers.
If we could, if the questions that are best answered are those that I guess are specific to some of the recovery that we're trying to do. Any other questions related to removal of debris or anything from the creek?
2010, we had the flood. Jesse, you remember that, don't you? You were in office then. It's my understanding that the federal government gave us, Humphreys County, a grant to clean out the creeks, and TDAC decided that wasn't a good idea. Now, I can give you a solution. You can't put 10 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket. That's just common sense.
I got 137 acre farm.
Now I'm also going to say this. Now, I was sitting on top of my house when the flood hit it and washed me down the creek, and we sat and watched whole trees, root balls and all, going right down there to that railroad culvert. hay bales, you name it, buildings, sheds, everything going right down the creek. And y'all can place blame on the railroad if you want to, but there's no, if they'd been sitting on top of that trestle cleaning it out as they got there, they couldn't have kept up with it. There was so much water coming down through. An 8-foot wall of water hit my house and knocked it off foundation. I lived 3 miles before you get to the railroad trestle. So it was not the railroad's fault. I hate to tell y'all that. Don't let these high-dollar lawyers fill you full of pipe dreams, because it ain't gonna happen.
Very good.
Anyway.
So if we could, thank you.
All right, let me tell you part of the solution. I've lived on that creek for 5 years. The first year we were there, it flooded, got up in my yard. I cleaned the creek out myself, just right on my property. For 3 years, we never got water in my yard. That's the solution, clean the creek out.
Okay. Could I ask, Ron, could you come on this side, please? This lady here in the front. This lady here has had her hand up from the beginning.
I live on Victory Lane, down where the container took the bridge out.
Okay.
The container's still right behind my house. I got a letter, I'm addressing to the gentleman with the glasses there, telling me that I'm gonna get fined $5,000 a day because I'm supposedly running a waste disposal, something on my property, when that is what is left of my home, my collection of blocks and sticks. I am building a home with, scrap by scrap, and I'm disabled. And y'all gonna charge me $5,000 a day? You want me to throw away my blocks, my wood, my underpinning that I scrounged around and covered in insulation and still just had it picked out of my eyes today, suffering from, and you gonna find me $5,000 a day when I cross the creek and there is 50-gallon drums sitting right there on the creek across from me full of paint. Billions of cans of black seal, little butane things, caulking, but I'm gonna get $5,000 a day.
So, ma'am, there will be some of your specifics that the panel won't know the answer to or be able to address. After the meeting, if we are able to learn more about your specific situation, we'd be glad to do that. But I
was just upset because they said, oh, they can't come in because the EPA won't let them, da-da-da-da. I walked out there. These are 50-gallon drums of
Yes,
paint,
ma'am.
fuel, caulking, everything, right there on that creek bank. And guess what? When it makes the curve, guess whose house it's at?
Yes.
Mine.
Yeah.
The trash that they're gonna find me for come from Waverly, because where I'm at, that is the end of the road.
Okay.
It makes a curve, and that's it. We're at the
Okay.
stop of everything.
okay.
Ma'am,
Thank you.
I will look into that. I'm not aware of the specifics.
I got my letter.
If you could actually show it to this gentleman right over here, he'll raise his hand, and that way we'll have a little bit of information, show your letter over there.
Ma'am, did you hear that?
Yep,
If you would
could
visit the
show
gentleman.
the gentleman over here the letter, and then I can do some research on that, and we can answer that question.
Thank you. Let's come here. Ma'am, Jamie, if you, oh,
I want to know,
sorry.
if you've been on the Hurricane Creek Bridge, you don't know what's going on, do you? They putting a bridge in on the Hurricane Creek Bridge and Highway 230.
We got the blueprints, and we looked at it.
And they putting the very same bridge back. It had one before it, just like it. They trying to put a 130-foot tree in under a 40-foot opening. Highway 13 has got a bridge up that you can get. It don't stop up, but Hurricane Creek Bridge does. I want to know why that they. I took the man down there and told him, I said, let's go down to the 13 highway and see what kind of bridge they got and see what kind of bridge you putting me back up here. He wouldn't even talk to me.
Sir, we do have tonight, if you'd like, in the back of the room, we do have Mr. Deason that could probably talk more or better educated about the particular bridges and the engineering behind those, if you'd like. Jamie, could we come right here, please?
My name is June Daly Stewart. I live at 208 East Acres Avenue in Waverly. And a few days before the flood, I was going up Highway 70 towards McEwen, and I looked at that railroad bridge. There were two small places that the water could go under that bridge. I don't know whose responsibility it is to keep that bridge cleared out, but they're not doing their job. And sure, there would have been a flood if that bridge had been cleaned out. The water would have flowed underneath that bridge, and there would have been a flood. But there would not have been an 8 to 10 foot tsunami that hit the end of my house, sent it off the foundation into the house next door, turned the house next door sideways, and Denise's house collapsed. One end of it collapsed. Trace Creek behind my house was not out of its banks when that wall of water hit my house. January the 27th of 2021, that 2021 was the year from hell for me. January the 27th of 2021, my husband died. And just a few days short of 7 months, our home that we had put together was destroyed. My house was so unsafe, nobody could get my furniture out. I got a few things out of that house, but not much. I lost 99 9/10% of everything I owned. My world was destroyed. And to any of you who have lost your husbands, you know how you feel about their possessions. They're little things that you can hold in your hand, and you can feel them. Everything of my husband's was gone. I lost my husband twice in 7 months. And it seems that nobody has wanted to even come and talk to me and tell me, I accept my share of responsibility for destroying your life. And nobody has had gumption enough to come to me and tell me they're sorry they destroyed my life. All I don't want $1 million. I don't want a penny. I just want somebody to take responsibility for this and tell me they're sorry. And that hasn't happened, and I may as well not hold my breath because I don't really think that's going to happen. But I do appreciate you listening to me, and all of you that have lost so much. I feel for you, and I hurt for you, and I cry for you. But my world was destroyed in 7 months. It was destroyed. And I'm trying so hard to adjust to my new life, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. My husband is gone, and what we had together is gone. But thank you for listening to me. At least you listened, and nobody else has. Thank you.
Is this on? It is. My name's Gretchen Turner, and I live down the street at 325 East Main, and our house had 28 inches in it. And this is my community. This church. I've told a few people, I was baptized right up there. I got married right there. The first time I ever talked in public was right up here. So, and these are my people. So I feel their pain. We're in a world of hurt too, and you can feel how raw the feelings are. And I think just to kind of get to something very specific, we really need to get the creeks cleaned out. And that's something that I've been working hard on personally, but I can't, I can pick up trash, but I can't get the trees out, and I can't get I can't get the cars out, but JR got the cars out, so appreciate JR. But we can't get the gravel out. We can't get the vehicles in that would clean out the creek. So what we would really like to do is to be able to clean the creek out. About 25, you guys probably know this better than I do. About 25 years ago, they stopped cleaning out the creek. Regulations changed, and we haven't been able to dredge the creek. We haven't been able to remove the gravel from one end to the other like we used to do. And the gravel is so full of creek. The creek is so full of gravel, and that doesn't count the trees, you know, that have grown up, and the logs and the snags, and of course, since the flood, it's just exponentially worse. But why can't we get the gravel out? I've been told that getting a tractor in there creates mud and creates pollution and creates silt, but in the mind of me and of every farmer that I know around here and of our city and county officials, we got to get the gravel out of this creek in order to make some progress so that creek doesn't flood. I know there's a lot of issues. I know none of you up there made it rain 20 inches, but, and I don't know if the railroad is culpable or not. I hope that if your study shows that the railroad is culpable, that you will point that out. But I think a question that I have is, help us, I guess that's not a question, help us get these creeks cleaned out. What are the rules? Can we remove gravel? How do we get the permits? What kind of debris exactly can get removed? Just help us figure this out. And I'm glad that you're all there, and I'm glad that you all are talking together now, and I have great confidence that we're going to be able to get this sorted out. And thank you for being here.
I agree with everybody here that the creeks do need to be cleaned out. My whole family grew up on Joe Street and in the 40s. And my whole world was flip-flopped that day. My brother lost his entire home. My uncle did too, on Joe Street. And it's been devastating. We all been devastated about it. And we've been fighting about it for years. People across the street from us back in the day, they would go down and put their gravel up close to their bank. Well, it ate out my mom's bank. It tore out her bank. She lost a lot of her her creek bank. And it's just been going out and out and out. But anyway, these creeks need to be cleaned out because it's going to rain again and it's going to do this devastation again. And we can't have these lives lost again. And I mean, if y'all worried about a crawdad or whatever it is, can't you just put it in a tank, clean it out, and put it back in there like you do fish? Come on now.
So again, still getting a lot of the perspective on cleaning out the creeks. Could another comment about that so we get a lot of the input and maybe we can try to answer.
Could we get an answer to the original question about whose responsibility it is to maintain the bridges and clean out the creeks?
All right, so let's start with creek cleanout. If an applicant, if a person, if a landowner would like to get in a creek and remove debris or material, Commissioner Sawyers, could you give us a little bit on that?
Let's talk about this just a little bit in that just initial modeling shows that a bank full in the creek, I can't tell you exactly where that's at, but if the top of the creek is full, that's about 3,000 cubic feet per second. This flood was about 20 to 21,000 cubic feet per second. So in order for that creek to maintain that, just from a a volumetric standpoint, it would have to be about.
It blocks everything going down that creek, okay? We live out on 13. The creeks are all back up, we got dams out there. Now, we didn't get as bad as people down here. But right, two years, first year I got about 4 foot of water in my backyard. Second year, it was up in my second step. Nobody come out there, oh, so we called T-Dot to come out there from McEwen. They come out to give me a bullshit story, okay? They have people coming down the side of that road picking up trash almost every other month. Why can't they have people going down through there cleaning the creeks out every year or every other year? That's where I'm at, man.
Yep. That's a very fair question. And there are a lot of issues there. If we can find a bunch of solutions that piece together to stop the flooding. Is it stop the flooding or clean out the creeks? Cleaning out part of the creeks may work. Other locations, it may not. There are federal laws. I agree. But
Clean all them creeks out, the drills come up so damn fast, you can't. I'm 74 years old, I've been down taking care of my bed for 2 years now. I can't do it no more. So when I've been talking, when people comes out there walking up down the road, nobody speaks English. They're picking up that trash, why ain't they cleaning out the creeks?
I think we can evaluate that as a part of the task force. We could actually look at that and see what the cost would be, because you're gonna have to go a long way down, but. Let us look at that alternative, as we've talked about. I mean, we have to collaborate, because we're going to have to pull money from here, from there, from other places. And there may be solutions that are cheaper than cleaning out the creek. Because that is I worked in West Tennessee for 25 years. They dug them all out in the early 1900s. Everybody in there, the communities, paid to clean them out. It was principally because there was prime agricultural land out there and they could afford to do it. In the 40s or 50s, they stopped doing it because it cost a lot of money. It wasn't economic.
So it's hard, if I could, if we get the microphone.
It is the landowner's responsibility to maintain their section of creek, unless they're. Okay.
So if we could stop there. So the specific question is, who is maintaining the creek as it travels underneath a given bridge? Is that the question?
The debris that backs up against the creek, yes, sir.
Okay.
Against the bridge, I'm sorry.
Yes. Does anybody on the panel could speak to responsibility for removing debris or material adjacent to a bridge?
Yeah. So as you see on the list, there's a multitude of bridges listed there, 19 structures in all. Each one is owned by someone. We own several. The counties and cities own some as well. TDOT has the state highway network, and we support that through maintenance. We also support the counties through a high-risk bridge replacement program, and that's what some of these others that are listed up in green and red are. For the debris that is caught on those bridges, it is our responsibility. There's calculations that are done to make, for a little bit of debris up to culverts and different things. I know we're talking in generalities, and it's difficult to address your specific questions, but each owning agency is responsible for cleaning them in that amount of time. And I think someone else in the crowd said it, but it is hard, and he mentioned the volumetric calculation. This event was historic, much like the Gatlinburg fires from 17 and on. There's some events that the best engineered solutions will only mitigate the effect of it. But to specifically answer your question, the owner of the bridge is responsible for removing debris.
So, Mr. Price, is there, for a TDOT bridge, is there a location where an average citizen can report to TDOT a concern or notify? Is there a method by which the citizens can do that?
Yeah, you can give them the record a comment. Yeah, the record a comment, if you go to TDOT's website, there's a spot on there to either call in or actually put it in online, and both of those. If anybody has interest in that, we'll be here a little bit after, and I can give you that.
Thank you. If I could, so as I mentioned at the beginning, there's a map that you can get, and I think the first thing to start with would be understand the bridge that you're concerned about, who's responsible for that. Is that the state of Tennessee, or is that local or other? So if you would start with that, determine who owns that, and then from there, responsibility for maintenance. Does that make sense to everybody? So that, I don't believe we have anybody here tonight that's able to answer a question on public assistance for housing. And that I don't know how better to answer that. We're not prepared for that particular question. Yeah, Ron, yes, there, and then behind you, or blue shirt, and then.
I'm Nancy Buchanan, and I live at Trace Creek at Gorman. My dad died a few years ago. He was 94 years old. He lived up there all his life, and he said Trace Creek used to be straight. But over the years, there's been so many trees and so much debris in there that the creek has taken where it's going around it. I have lost about 40 feet of land because the creek is coming around the debris and it's washing out the bank. It won't take many more years for me to lose a trailer in that creek. And a few years ago, I tried to get flood insurance. They told me I wasn't in a flood zone. Well, when we had the flood, someone came up there with some big machinery, and it took the logs up like this and put them on the bank. Well, when we had the big rain a few weeks ago, it washed again, and those fell right back off in the creek. So they're still there. Well, then someone came up talking to us about the bridge. They're going to build us a big new bridge, and hey, I'm happy about that. But they said it was going to have a center pier. If it has a center pier and all the debris in the creek, it's going to wash down, hit the center pier, and there we're going to be again. It's going to flood back again. So several people have been up there and looked at the creek and said it needed to be cleaned out, but no one ever done it. So that's my main concern. It's going to keep backing up till I'm going to lose land. It's going to keep washing. It's going to flood. Well, it really got her house this time. It got most of my front yard, but it got her house. But that's my concern.
I do have a thought, if I could. You bring up a good point that I wanted to make sure it wasn't a topic that we planned on talking about, but anyone can purchase flood insurance anywhere in the United States. So please, if you've ever been told, yes. So please. I encourage you very much to look into that more, because that's not the case. You can buy flood insurance.
So anybody in the United States can purchase a flood insurance policy. I'm not sure why they said that. It can be expensive, yes.
Yes.
There's a gentleman raising a green folder that's been waiting to talk for quite a while.
I have many things to say, but first off, my name is Rodney Conti, okay? I've met some of you before. I've probably talked to many of the people at TDEC, okay? But to answer your question about the FEMA flood insurance, it's not actually, I'm a flood adjuster for 10 years. It's not exactly true. You have to ask your community 2 people within a prescribed amount of space need to have flooded in order to enact that. That's what I asked Jesse for in 2019. I was told we're not doing that. But they did do FEMA for businesses. They just didn't do FEMA for me or my neighbor who's flooded out 5 times since 2019. Okay, so I live on a road, there's a county bridge. It was a 50-year-old wooden county bridge. It survived the 2010, which I wasn't here for. It survived the 2010 flood, okay? But it didn't survive the February 19th floods, okay? The bridge washed away. The county comes back. I don't know if Randall's here or not. The county came and they said, okay, we're not putting a bridge back in, we're gonna put in culverts. And I explained to them, I'm sorry, I actually have some experience running disaster programs on the federal and state level. I know how this works, and I can tell you that you're not gonna take a 29-foot clear span, engineers, anybody, and then you're gonna put 4 culverts in, and then you're gonna put chert on top of it. So they put the temporary bridge in, 4 culverts. I said, blow a hole in the culvert and chain it to the tree. They said, why? I said, because that's gonna be down my creek causing a bigger problem. Guess what happened? It washed away. So what did they do? They did it again. Then they came in and they put the culverted bridge in. I went to Randall right after I met with Jesse. I was told, hey, they're elected officials. Hey, they're elected officials, okay? There have been 5 catastrophic failures on my bridge. 5. The first bridge went away in 2019, 2 culverts in 2019. 2020, we got flooded out again. 2021, twice we get flooded. 2 times. I got stranded on my property twice. I have alpha-gal syndrome. Y'all know, anybody else know what that is? I'm deathly allergic to things, okay? I don't even have access. This caused me a 27-year marriage, okay? This has been going on and on. To answer Mr. T-Dot, you said that when there's debris that's piled up on a bridge, they put in a covered bridge. The debris washed up. What are you supposed to do with it? What happens? Let's pretend it's your bridge. What do you do with it? You pick it up, and then what do you do with it?
So some of these specific questions, of course,
Well, I'll
Mr.
tell you
Price,
what you're not supposed to do. Let me just, a rhetorical question. What you're not supposed to do is pick it up out of one side of the creek and put it on my property. You're not supposed to, and then when I'm out there videoing you and you tell me, well, you didn't bitch about it when I threw all this riprap there so that I didn't ask for. What did they say? Well, we'll just put it in the creek. So they pick it up out of one side of the creek and they put it in another side of the creek. Then I have another neighbor that decides to hard armor his own property with loose gravel. Now, every time that they put chert in there, they don't put it in lifts. Anybody in construction, when you compact things, you put them in lifts. You put 6 inches, compact it to 3, then 6. No, they dump 3 foot of chert. Okay. Then there's a flood, and then what happens to all of that chert? Oh, it goes and causes a gravel dam. Now, what did that gravel bar do? It only washed away 2 acres of my property. It washed away loads of trees. Oh, and by the way, the access to my agricultural fields, I'm a farmer, washed away. I've asked TDEC. I've talked to them every year about this. And you know what they tell me? Well, you moved out there. There are hillbillies out there, rednecks out there.
all right, sir, if we could, out of respect for other people.
Okay, so anyway, that's what I'm asking. What do you do with the debris? Do you put it back in the creek? Why do they put a culverted bridge in something, and then who's helping me? Who's helping me? That's all I'm asking. Who's helping me? Yeah, I got flooded out in 2019, in 2020, and in 2021, okay? Twice.
If you've got a specific question.
My specific question is, who's in charge? Who's going to make sure that the county follows sound engineering? That's all that I'm asking.
Okay.
We all want good roads and bridges, and we want safe bridges. But what we don't want is more problems and to keep losing property.
Okay.
Everybody here is losing property.
All right.
Are y'all going to amend my taxes?
All right. Thank you, Ron. All right. Sir, if we could here.
My question is, a lot of people have asked it already. but can you still obtain a permit to get on the gravel bars and remove the debris and pull up the growth that's causing the gravel buildup to begin with? I know it's a very slow process and expensive, but I think it's something FEMA ought to consider paying for. And my question is, can you do that? Can you get a permit to do that?
So if I
Or
could.
or can a person get a permit to do that?
Okay, so thank you for that. So the specific question is, can a landowner obtain a permit to get in and remove material from the creek? Is that, yes? Could,
Well, you can certainly apply for a permit, and you can look at that. I do want to talk about gravel bars and point bars and those kind of things. I mean, that's what streams and rivers do. They move sediment and gravel. And a lot of times, and I think it's evidence in some of the pictures that we've seen, in big flood events, the gravel is not there. You know, it's mobile. It's being transported by the velocities that are there. If the velocities get high enough, they're going to pick up the gravel and move it. And that's the way that this gravel moves downstream. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I think there are some gravel mining permits where you can go in the dry and mine some of the gravel. And you could apply for that. Yes, sir. Well, let me say, I'm going to divert you to April Grippo over here, and she can provide the answers as to where to proceed with that. As far as removing debris, woody debris or cultural debris that's washed up against bridges and things like that, I mean, you can pull it out. I mean, that's, you know, it's, you just, you don't have to get a permit to pull out large trees and woody debris, things that are not buried. Pardon? Well, the state doesn't have a program to do that. I don't think the county or the city has a program to do that.
all right, if we could, so that everybody has the benefit.
May I speak? I have a microphone. I have property at 107 Powell Avenue. It has been flooded every time. We have asked, we have a 100-year flood zone that goes behind the house. And behind the house is Trace Creek. So every year, got flooded, every year. This year, my house flooded away. We have asked every year to have it cleaned out, drug out, cars took out. Like they said, who's responsible? Not this year, but who was responsible in the beginning since I moved there? Nothing got cleaned out. After each flood, nothing was done. We are losing property land. I've lost, it gets smaller each time. Just go look at my backyard. It gets smaller each time. This is not, yes, this was catastrophic. This was horrible. But we did nothing in the past to help the future. We didn't. We didn't do nothing in the past to help the future. Every flood I got, my house got a little bit higher, and a little bit higher, and a little bit higher. And this time it floated across the street. I live on Powell Avenue. The two streets in front of me, guess what? One street has no houses left. That's where our kids grew up, played basketball, played in the creek. The next creek over, street over, has two houses. Two houses, y'all. This is where we live, the blue-collar people, the people that have kids, the people that make up most of our community. My street has 4. We've done nothing in the past to prevent this. What are we going to do for the future? Quit telling us, oh, we got to do. No, we want to know what's being done. What have you done since the flood? Because where my house is, that 100-year flood zone, every time it rains now, it used to be dry. You might get maybe 8 inches or 6 inches. Just a few weeks ago when we got that good rain, guess what? It was back in the yards again, out of the banks. What's up there deterring that water towards my house that wasn't there before, that hasn't been touched? Go behind Powell Avenue and look at that creek. It has to be 20 foot up in the air where that water come up, and like they said, a tsunami came in. My neighbor here, she has a hole that you can imagine is like huge, where it just came over, washed it out, and it's across the street. A sinkhole. We're not talking a puddle. We're talking something you can drive a truck in. Nothing was done in the past. What are we going to do? Our homes are still today at risk. The four that are still there, are at risk every time it rains. What have you cleaned out to deter that water from my house? Because as of today, you've done nothing. And we've got it on video. We have the water coming out of the banks as of the last rain. What are you doing about it?
Hello, my name is Richard Black. I live in McEwen. I have for the past 15 years, proudly, and this is the best state I've ever lived in on the planet. But saying this, my wife was the first victim of the flood. She was coming home from Humphreys County Nursing Home, and a cop had already blocked off and said, well, there's going to be a flood warning, so you need to turn around. As soon as she turned around, a wall of water hit her, and she was knocked down into the culvert there where the railroad tracks are, was dragged down 100 yards, and a 75-year-old man saved her. And, you know, I know for a fact it's Waverly's fault that these floods are happening because, you know, a 40-foot container got slammed up against the bridge right there. And that's when the water came over, and it was by the golf course, and then that's when she got hit. You know, and I said, you know, I pray to God every day, you know, to say, what the hell is going on with people? You know, the governor of Tennessee, which is Bernard Lee, you know, and also Marsha Blackburn is a representative Republican of Tennessee. And, you know, they tell me they got $50 to $100 million in reserve still in a trust fund that's building interest so they can come down here and fix all this stuff. But you know what? When they first came out, all of a sudden, because, you know, Kentucky had a tornado and Colorado had a flood, they pulled everybody out. And the people in Afghanistan already came back, 180,000 people that could be qualified, like geologists, doctors, all that, and not one of them was called upon here in Waverly, and to me that's very sad. You know, but I still pray every day that people will, you know, have strength, keep their faith, keep going one day at a time. You know, I lost 3 friends myself, and damn. We can do better. We could do better. We're the best country in the world. We could do better. Thank you for listening to me.
Over here. If we let us bring you the microphone.
Answer me this. Do you know how many gallons of water is in 1 inch of rain per square acre? 27,154. Times that by 22. Then times that by over 4,000 acres. That's over 400 billion gallons of water that hit us. The creeks need to be cleaned. We all know that. Get it done. You know what it's like to watch an 8-year-old scream while you're on a roof? Well, I do.
Okay, my name's Marion Brooks. I live on Fairground Drive, which I'm one of the few houses left there. And I have a local question to ask y'all. Just the local people, because we're not getting too many answers to the other questions right now. Okay, all the houses that's washed away, the lots that they were on, and the houses that are left that nobody's living in, some of them on my street people have come in and bought. This land is not being maintained. So I live because I'm redoing my house and close to moving in, thankfully. These other lots all have the grass growing. Some of them where the machinery has come in and pushed everything up to the road, there's ponds. in the lots. Are y'all gonna make the people that still own that land take care of their land? Or what is gonna be done with all of that property where there once was houses and there's not anymore, or there's houses that are not being maintained? There's one house in my neighborhood that there's practically been nothing done to since the flood. So that's for local people, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that is in that situation where around their neighborhood there's grass this high now. So thank you.
We knew that was going to be a problem a few days after this disaster hit. There is a city ordinance that requires property owners to maintain their property. Relates primarily to grass, the heights of grass and debris. We have an ordinance after giving the property owners notice. We can enter the property, we can clean the property, we can mow the property, and then we attach a lien against that property to try to recover our costs from that. Some of these properties have fallen into the mortgage companies have them. They're very difficult to get a hold of, to contact, and whatever. But we're gonna do the best we can. It's gonna be a difficult problem. I know what you're talking about some of these properties where they have done the final cleaning and pushed out the foundations and the footings, and where the house is set. That level of property is now lower than what it was. So we're going to do the best we can from the local level. Bear in mind too, we lost our entire public works complex, and we are still trying to acquire equipment. And what we're finding out with new equipment purchases is it's hard to get. We ordered a piece of equipment last week that we said hopefully we'll have in October. So we're dealing with that also, but we'll do the absolute best we can.
I want to change the subject again, and I think cleaning the creeks are very important. But my husband and I own a piece of property that's got Jennifer's Gifts sign out front on Highway 70. Most of you are familiar with it. It's right outside the city limits. It's in the county. There's two buildings there that have over 10,000 square feet. Tracy Creek is about a quarter of a mile behind them. This water that came in the front door next to Highway 70. It didn't come from Trace Creek. It came down Highway 70. It broke the front doors out. One of them had a garage door that it pushed open. The other one had a double steel door that it broke out. The back doors weren't broke out near the creek. That right there shows you it didn't come from the creek. It came down Highway 70. We're about probably less than a mile from where it came across the railroad. So cleaning the creeks out might do something, and I feel like it needs to be done, and probably has needed to be for years, because they need to be deeper and they need to hold more water. My question is, who's responsible for this?
Part of the study that Colonel Saul mentioned at the very beginning by the Corps of Engineers for the city and county is to model the stream and understand what's going on with Trace Creek. To understand what happens when rain falls, to have an understanding of the amount of rain and how that reacts. Every storm is different, but we try our best to model the creek and understand, when rain falls, where will the water go. I think, part of your question is wanting to understand what happened in 2010, and we're going to try to understand that. Yes, and I think I misspoke. I said 2010, didn't I? Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, but that's part we're trying to understand, and then the outcome of that understanding will be, is there something that can be done? So that's the next step. We understand the creek, then we try to understand what can be done. Money is... I'm sorry for that. As you all have heard, many of your questions somewhat go back to where does the money come from, and it takes money to solve some of these problems. What the Corps is trying to understand is by modeling this creek is finding where the best bang for the buck could be to reduce the flood threat here.
When you're ready, sir.
Okay, Jamie or Ron, I've got two hands up here in the middle. Oh, well, sorry, we'll get right back to you.
Joel Eaton. I have a question for Commissioner Salyers from TDEC. What sort of mitigation and creek cleaning would help with these 5 and 10-year floods that we have? Obviously, you can't do anything about a 1,000-year flood, but there are periodic floods in Trace Creek ever since I've been out here for the past 15 years, I think.
So if I understood you correctly, the smaller flood events is really what you're talking, the 5 to 10 year flood events. And so a lot of the properties are in the 100-year floodplain. And you know, on the surface, that sounds like it should flood once every 100 years. That's not the way the risk factors work. I think it's, you're gonna, if you had flood insurance, you're gonna make a claim within 30 years. 26% chance you're gonna make a claim in 30 years quicker than that. What we want to do with the model is look at this and find the best solutions for those events. And it could be flood walls. There could be a levee in town. There maybe have to be some homes that have to be moved out of the floodplain because it's going to cost $50 million to prevent one area from flooding when you have $3 million of infrastructure there. This is how we would get to the answers of that.
Okay, I'm Diana Bishop. I've just been up here 6 years. We were not severely affected by the flood physically, but emotionally, as the whole town has been, we have been. My question is, you talked about in the beginning that in the 1900s, they took care of the creeks. And in the 1950s, they stopped doing it. We have more resources, we have more people, we have more equipment that could do it, and have we not learned anything in 60 years that it's not important to clean out the creeks? And the Corps of Engineers, this is not the first flood. This was not the first flood. This was the first one that caused lives to be lost, but it's not the first flood. Why are we just looking at it? Why are you just now doing the studies? They've done studies for years over how the water works and how the water moves. And obviously the issue is cleaning out the creeks. That probably would not have helped prevent all the damage that was done in August, but it would have certainly not made it as bad if we had sense enough that they had years ago when they didn't have the technology that we have now.
Can I clarify on that? When I was talking about the channelization or cleaning out of creeks, I was speaking in West Tennessee. There was valuable agricultural land there. The agricultural community, the local folks, paid in money to clean that out, and then
This is not the only area this happens. This happens all over the United States.
I know. Oh, great. I mean, but no. Well, ma'am, yes. So out there, they did put that in there. They were unable to maintain those channels. Actually, the Corps of Engineers was even involved out there for a number of years, and they were able to reduce the flood risk by a little bit, but not much. The unintended consequences were much worse. The bottom line is the economics didn't work and people got tired of paying to clean it out. So there has not been I don't think there is a drainage district that was ever formed on Trace Creek in Humphreys County, I don't think. So that mechanism would not be in place to collect taxes from people to go in and pay for that should you,
But
come up with
you're not letting people do it themselves either. I've heard questions about getting permits, I've heard since the flood about the EPA involved and not wanting to mess with the crawdads and the ecosystem and stuff like that. But this is not a new problem. It's new to Waverly. in essence, but like I said, this is the third flood that we've been here in 5 years. Okay, not to the extent of August, but it's the third time. Why in 5 years that I can vouch for are you just now looking at this stuff that has to be maintained across the country? I mean, we just got to maintain
Very
it.
few places
And then you're
maintain it
going
across
to
the country.
tell people that have lost everything, they don't, part of them probably don't even live here, and now you're going to fine them for going and mowing their darn grass? Come on. There's got to be something better to do to clean up the mess and maintain these vacant lots now that nobody lives in, besides going after the person and say, sorry you lost everything, sorry you're still in a motel, but you still have to get down there and mow your grass, that your lawnmower's down the creek.
Thanks, ma'am. And you mentioned the Corps, and look, I owe you honesty here and transparency. So some of the reasons that we're not directly answering questions because we're not directly familiar with that location. Much of the reason is because until we go look into it, we don't know whose resource and therefore responsibility, et cetera, it is to do that. And then so when we're talking cleanup of a creek, there's multiple structures along the creek, there's multiple ownership along the creek. So this is complicated. And that's not an excuse, that's the truth. And when you said that there's these problems nationwide, ma'am, you're 100%, unfortunately, you're 100% correct, and statewide and countywide. And so we have studied some limited areas of Trace Creek whenever we can get and compete for funding. And that's common across. The resources are limited. And so I know that we don't want to all just talk about the future here because we have some real issues and some real pain. But the goal of this, combining this group as a task force, which isn't commonly done here, is because at the output of this, it's not just the study, it's who does what, who owns what. So I can hand you something, because I know if my home got flooded and washed away right now, I honestly wouldn't know who does what. If I want to clean out the creek behind my house in Texas, I don't know who to go to get permission, so a lot of times people just do it. But when we're talking resources and doing it the right way, a lot of my frustration is who does what. And so the whole goal here is that we are going to do that. I knew coming into this, we knew that this would not, that we weren't going to come and be applauded and that this was going to be some contentious, some real issues because you have real problems. But I'm telling you that this is, I think, the best way to get after real solutions is we have to provide you a transparent, clear path forward. So the study's not going to solve everything, but when you talk about where the water went down a highway, where the water came in Trace Creek, nobody wants to hear the historic nature of this because it makes it to where we couldn't have done anything, and we as humans don't like that. I don't like that. That's why I said at the beginning, as soon as it happens, we're all, what could we do? What can we do next time? And it's taking this study to say what really happened and what really would make a difference. And that's the commitment that the team is making here. So this is not me trying to stop the questions or give excuses. What I'm telling you is when I don't respond directly, it's because we have to take all this back. That's why we are here and make sure we're addressing. One of the things that we know is who cleans out what portions of the creek, who has responsibility, the permitting, and that'll be some of the early do-outs from the task force. I just wanted to address that because I hadn't really spoken, but I'm not trying to shirk. I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so I've listened to y'all say some things. And we, like everybody else, we live in Gorman. We also got flooded. We went back to our property. There was not a sign of anything left on it. We had lived in that house 35 years. My grandparents before that, we'd seen floods. We'd not seen anything like this. But I'm not taking a thing away from this Waverly community. It's horrible what has happened, but we saw it firsthand on the other end of town. Now, what I do want to say is that at least an hour and a half before it ever hit here, our bridges up that way were blocked, the whole Trace Creek area was flooded. That water's going to go somewhere. So guess where it came? Down 70, whoever said that. It blew out everywhere. We couldn't even get over there. We were trapped out there on Highway 70 in the middle of everything. Not just us, but whoever was there and saw it. But I called my husband in Waverly to tell him I was moving the vehicles, which we got out with one, thank the Lord, but I told him I was moving the vehicles. He had to bring the keys home. He said, "There's nothing happening here in Waverly." He said, "What are you talking about?" That was at 5:30. And I'm not exactly sure when it blew out at here and when it came on down, but no doubt it did. But the thing is, I had 12 foot of water in my yard before that ever happened. That was on the McEwen side. So it had to go somewhere. So when it blew out and came down here, of course it's tragic. It's terrible. I mean, my heart's broke for those folks too, but it didn't start there. There's other creeks that way, Hurricane Creek, Blue Creek. There's creeks everywhere, and they're all the same. They all have trees growing in them. They all have, we were kids, we grew up on that creek, we played in that creek. I don't know what the environmental thing is, but my question is, number one, if you live on that creek, can I go down in that creek and take a tractor myself and clean it out? Because I bet you there's a few people in here that would do that. And the second thing is, they would scrape it over to the side to keep it from clogging up the creek, instead of what I see them hauling bridge brush out and stacking it up on the side so it'll just roll back down in the creek when it rains. And the next thing is, with all this environmental stuff, which is what it seems to keep coming back to me, do you really think we don't want our creeks safe? Do you really think we don't want our families to be able to go down and enjoy them? Of course we do. But do you think they're safer and better out there now with refrigerators in them and cars in them and cans of paint and oil and gas and everything else that's washed out down this creek? No, let's just clean a few trees out and let's try to do it from that perspective instead of having to, people lose their whole lives. So can we do that? That's the question. So can we go down there in front of our house and clean that creek out?
You can go remove woody debris, refrigerators, cars, anything yes, you can. And, if you start digging in creeks, then you would have to get a permit. We have people that can. Okay. Well, I have to follow federal laws and state laws, and what we're working on here is.
Hey, I have something to say real quick.
Find those solutions.
I lived in 11A East Brookside, right behind Regions Bank. And these are most of my friends and family that I've made over the years. I risked my own life to get in that water with someone I didn't even know, a random guy in a boat. The boat flipped. I smacked 2 trees and 2 more boats going down, nearly drowned it, to rescue my mother and my sister and my friends and family. And what did we get? Nothing, And 3 months later, my mother died, and I'm only 17. Remember that. I don't have a father. 17 years old. But my mother, rather her child bury her than the mother bury her own child. So I feel everybody's pain in this room. But no amount of money can bring their lives back. $20 million. Oh wow, it's great. For what? Can't bring my mother back. Can't bring that man's husband back. Can't bring his wife back. And all the children. And I had to sit there on a drain pipe and watch a kid that had drowned, floated down the stream, that one of my friends, Thomas Irwin, found in his car. So tell me, there's no amount of money, no matter how much fiction there's nothing. You can't fix none of that. You can't bring it back. Because y'all made mistakes of not doing y'all's jobs. But everybody else here can go to work and do their job, but y'all can't do y'all's. Y'all can't clean out the bridges. You know, we all grew up poor who lived there. We had nothing. But when we got the apartments, they were homes to people who couldn't be something. That's all I have to say.
Hello, my name is Mike Pogriba. My question, and I'm shifting a little bit, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. We have homes that are right on the banks of Trace Creek, and there's folks that are building back as we speak. So we have homes that were demolished by the flood, and then we have homes that were condemned and demolished. The question is, should people be building back right now? And I understand why they are, but with this modeling being pushed out for so long, I mean, time is of the essence, and you may have answered it when you spoke about, you know, $50 million of expenses to save $3 million in assets. Is it possible that some of these homes that folks are working on and building back are going to be condemned when this report comes out? Thank you.
I guess part of an answer that I could provide is that there are current FEMA flood maps for Trace Creek through Waverly. So there are currently maps that show the flood hazard. Part of our study will be to update those. That map is dated 2009. It is based upon a study done in 1986. So what FEMA would do is do a formal study, which is what we are doing now, create a flood map. Periodically, they will update that map based on some land use changes that they've seen. But we are updating that flood hazard map with our study. But there is a map now that shows you your flood hazard in Waverly on Trace Creek. So I would use that information to make decisions about building back.
Hey,
Yes. Where is that? Well, I don't know all the headwaters, but what we came tonight to talk about was Waverly, was Trace Creek in parts of Humphreys County and definitely within Waverly.
Well, that's what the point I'm trying to get at. Trace Creek does not start in Waverly.
Sure.
Trace Creek starts on the other side of the McEwen.
Sure.
They had documented 23 and a half inches of rainfall in McEwen. McEwen's here,
Yeah.
Waverly's here.
Sure.
You want to know where all that water came from?
Yes. I mean, yes. Sure.
23 and a half inches of rain in McEwen, and it's all downhill to Waverly. That's where your problem is. But
Hey.
you can't just clean out the creek in Waverly and not clean out the creek all the
Yeah.
way to McEwen.
So I was addressing the question about, you know, home built back currently. Just wanted to share the information that there is a flood hazard, and that information is out there for.
So you asked a specific question, though, if it would be condemned. And the answer to that question, it's a local action to condemn a property. That is not something that someone would do. So if someone builds back a property, it's not going to be condemned. I would encourage whoever builds back to maybe look at using mitigating measures, maybe an elevation, whatever is appropriate for the risk that lot faces. But no one from the government's going to come and condemn a property, a house that's rebuilt, to whatever codes exist or don't exist in an area. So if it meets whatever standards are enacted locally, no one's going to condemn the property. I would encourage whoever is building there, though, to take a look at what the risk is when they do it.
Could you talk to that? Could you tell them what's required to build back right now?
Okay, we have always required a certificate of elevation from a licensed surveyor that's skilled in issuing those certificates. If the day comes after these studies are done and there's properties that we feel like may need to be bought out, that's the property owner's choice. You are not forced to sell your property. That's strictly, property owner's choice if they want to sell their property or not. And we're a long way from that program tonight. We're still in recovery phase tonight. So at some point in time, that may happen as we get into mitigation with the FEMA process. Does that answer?
But currently, right now, you're required to build 1 foot above the 100-year flood elevation, correct?
That's what most people are doing. The Appalachian Regional Group, it's in building houses now, that's exactly what they're doing. Okay, okay. And I know hearing from them, it's time consuming to get a certificate of elevation right now. Surveyors are covered up, and so it takes a while to get one. Now that's a requirement for the city of Waverly. What happens in the county, I'm not in tune to that.
The fact of the matter is, since September the 9th of last year, when the county elected to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, part of which, because it was needed and has been needed for some time to help prevent the kind of devastation that we saw outside the city of Waverly, in McEwen, and on every creek in the county. We also now require a certificate of elevation for any significant improvement or construction of homes in the designated floodplain. We all know that the waters exceeded what the floodplain defines in this latest event, and it's a step forward that has to happen, but it's time consuming to redraw those maps. When they're redrawn, they won't be drawn to that 1,000-year flood mark. I've been assured that by FEMA. So my fear is that elevating a home to what's the requirement to be in compliance with the National Flood Insurance Program won't be sufficient the next time we get 20 inches of rain. I don't know if anything will be. Real briefly, I'll answer a couple questions about local bridges and flooding along the creeks. County governments can't go on private property and spend public funds. It's just the law. Now, we are allowed to clean. Yes, sir, it is. The counties, by legislation, are allowed to clean out.
All right, sir, if we could.
No, sir, I'm not lying.
All right, sir. All right. All right, sir. We'd like to. Everybody else would like to hear what Mr. Wallace says. Thank you. Thank you.
So in conclusion, the county government can clean out above and below a bridge to a distance of 75 feet. There's legislation that allows for that interaction. That's the limit of what we can do in terms of operating in these non-navigable streams like we're talking about here tonight. Legislation can and often is changed, and my hope is that from these studies and this expertise is represented on this panel tonight, we'll see enough evidence to motivate our General Assembly in the state of Tennessee and our Congress on the national front to make some changes that address these things preemptively. I mean, I don't know what else to do.
Sir?
I think we all agree that once the water gets to Waverly, we need to let it go through town as fast as possible. So cleaning out the creek in some means, eliminating the loose stuff from the banks would be a good idea. Considering any new bridges that are local or state, we could clear span those bridges rather than put intermediate piers out in the creek. That'll let most of the debris pass right on under the creek. One big key is we need to be able to find a way to slow the water down before it gets to Waverly. Mr. Carrington, I've talked with you about it very early on after the flood, and the local landowners in Humphreys County have the key to be able to help slow this water down before it gets to Waverly. This can be done with the landowners granting temporary construction easements to put water detention structures in the mouths of the significant hollers that empty into the Trace Creek bottom. You can see these examples of these water control structures in any municipality that you go in. Nashville, Franklin, Brentwood, Dixon, they've all got them. Every shopping center, every parking lot has a means to slow the runoff down as it comes off their site. We could do the same thing here, even by only picking out maybe 10 or 15 significant watersheds that empty into the Trace Creek bottom. And in cooperation with the landowners, we put these structures right at the mouths of every hollow that empties into the bottom. You get the dirt from the hillsides right where you put the culvert in. And if we can work that way, I know Representative or Congressman Green and Sam have been working on this some, and I've been reading their progress. And I hope with everyone's cooperation, Mr. Reedy, too, that as soon as you say a lot less than 2 years, 18 months, maybe we can see some kind of progress. But I believe everyone here, if we could see one water retention structure being built somewhere, that'll give us a good glimmer of hope about the things to come. And I'm hoping that somehow or another everybody can work it out where the funds can be obtained just to do one structure where everyone can see what the results will be. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I appreciate I appreciate those comments. Again, when we do our study, we're going to be looking at things, just like he mentioned, that have as low of maintenance as possible and that are effective at the timing of the water. So we will be trying to look at some of those very ideas. So I really appreciate that comment. Yes, sir.
Some of my facts might not be 100% correct, but I did some research, and there's a company in Louisiana, a family company, and they make a machine just for cleaning creeks out. It's basically a bobcat mounted on pontoon floats with tracks on it. So I did some research, and TVA utilized this when they cleaned up the Kingston ash spill. I talked to the Benton County Executive's Office, and I discovered the West Tennessee River Basin Authority, back in March 2018, received a $750,000 grant by Senator Ed Jackson's backing. And I found a contractor in Benton County, and what he does, he uses the same type of machine that I found, and he gets in the water, he picks up all the trees and stuff, puts them on the bank and disposes it. But he's in the center of the water, and I found there's a generic permit. I forget the lady's name. She signed it. I think the permit's good for like April of next year, and I'm assuming that's for cases like this. So they're doing it in Benton County. They're getting government funds. And I'm not sure, but at one time I heard we had the chance to join the West Tennessee River Basin, but we did not want to do that. But some of this might not be 100% true, but this is the facts I've discovered.
Thank you for that.
I can speak to that question. I was 3.5 years ago executive director of the West Tennessee River Basin Authority, where we did a lot of flood risk reduction, flood management. The Basin Authority owns 2 or 3 of these amphibious track hose that are utilized in streams to remove woody debris and loose log jams. And they do set them on the bank. And it is in part state funded, in part funded by 20 counties and a lot of municipalities where they do contribute to that organization that does take a comprehensive approach in flood risk reduction, much like what we're talking about here tonight, to try to pull the parts and pieces together, find federal dollars when they're available, utilize local dollars, state dollars when they're available, and solve problems based on good engineering principles. Yeah, there's 140 flood control structures out there that are maintained by the authority. You know, there's a lot of things that we would be looking at as a part of this comprehensively to work on that. The current executive director of the West Tennessee River Basin Authority is sitting on the front row right here, a really sharp young engineer, and he'd be more than happy to answer any questions later in the evening. And there is a private contractor that does operate 1 or 2 amphibious track hose out of Benton County.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to note the time. I would like to have the ability for people to have a few minutes at the end. Again, we've got some of the maps in the back for those that are interested in about particular bridges of concern and they want to understand more about that. So I would like to have a few minutes at the end for people to be able to do that. I think we've got some other...
There's some gentlemen in the choir loft that have questions.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll do one more. Jamie, is there a way we can get, Ron? Can we get a microphone up for?
Can I?
I'll start this over again. 1967, this was a problem right here, what we're all discussing. Everybody here, prayers for the funds that's deceased, ones that lost everything they had, and I'm one of those. 67, this was a problem. It was addressed, there's documents, this place was supposed to be cleaned up, and a guy tried to get it cleaned up. He was building down there where the levee broke loose. He owned all that land. He fought the city and the county to get all this straightened out. He said, quote, "This Waverly's going to get wiped off the map and there's going to be countless people dead." Well, he's not here to see what he predicted would happen. Right here in my hand, this is called a Band-Aid. That's all that's been putting on things. That's all that gets put on anything is a darn Band-Aid. And I'm not downing anybody in this room. We got to work together. Let's get this cleaned up. The Tennessee River, down there, when it gets a running, it gets a flowing. You got the Duck River and you got the Buffalo River. Now you got everything pushing back here. You got creeks all over this county. Every bit of the rain from McEwen comes right through Waverly. Somewhere along the line, these creeks dump into Waverly. Everything from Jayville has got to go through us to get to that river. These bridges have columns built right in the middle of the creek. Who in their right mind years ago would put columns in the middle of a creek? Unheard of. Even who would even build homes on a creek years ago? Unheard of. This stuff can be straightened out and it can be dealt with. If you would build arches, you can clean these creeks all you want to clean these creeks. I've been on these creeks since 1965 in this county. I've walked every creek. I know every creek in this county, every bridge, every tree, every bluff. It's a mess. The gravel cannot broadcast gradually down where it's supposed to go and dump out. It can't do that. Why? You've got columns that's in the middle of the creeks. Arches. Has anybody ever heard of an arch? Have you seen an arch? Put arches. Get the legs out of the creek. All this stopped. The dam down on Trace Creek. It's fixed to be something to go down with the dam. It's all turned loose on the left side. The dam's got to go. The dam's creating a problem. The rocks, the gravel cannot flow. Nothing can flow. Get that dam out of the creek, problem solved. Build arches on these creeks, bridges, problem solved. You won't have to worry about dredging. Maybe cut a few trees here and there, problem solved. Why? Because everything moves freely. And you got to remember, the Tennessee River gets rolling, backs it up. Duck River and Buffalo River gets rolling, it's backing up. These creeks cannot dump quick enough. First of all, they sure can't dump with all of these columns in these creeks. I've said this since I was a kid, fishing these creeks and swimming them. What nut would have built a bridge right in the middle of a creek? Really? Really? Engineers? Come on, guys. Engineer. You're an engineer. I can engineer this. I can stop this problem. But I'm not an engineer. I'm an engineer on my jobs. I'm a painter. Been painting here for 42 years. I engineer every day. Everything goes. When you get up and you get stuff done, you engineer, it gets going. Not downing you guys, but you come on. Your title's an engineer. Let's be an engineer. Let's fix the problem. Stop putting these right here on. And Mr. Napier would turn over in his grave if he knew what happened right here. He predicted this in 1967, and there's documents where he tried to get this fixed. Losing battle. Why? And it can be fixed if everybody do their parts, and even the landowners may help clean it up. But you're not going to clean anything up until you get these columns out of the creek, out of the center of the creek. Absurd. It's absurd. Let's get it fixed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say one quick thing for Mr. Sawyer? Is there a place that we can all go to see transparently what the environmental rules are? I lost my business and I've rebuilt, but I think we would all appreciate knowing the rules. Because, well, I've had to pray for you because I really have been upset from the things I hear, and now I believe some of them aren't true. Some of the things city officials, not city, but county officials have told me, I feel like are in error. So is there somewhere we can go as a people to see what the correct answers are?
There certainly is, and I've got a couple of websites here I can direct you to. Could direct you to Tennessee Code Annotated, but nobody wants to read that. But we do have some rules and regulations, Dr. Lee Barber and April Grippo up front, if y'all can raise your hand, and we can direct you to the websites that talk about the general permits, the individual permit process, what state law is, what federal law is, why we do the things that we have to do. So, and again, David Blackwood's up front. The lady back there that's wanting to remove some trees, come up and talk talk to these folks, and hopefully you get some good answers.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm sorry, I do have to note the time. We did have a commitment to terminate at 8 o'clock out of respect both for you all, for the church, and for our panel. We do need to stop at this point. We do have members of the government here. If you do have questions that you would like to try to get addressed before you leave. Otherwise, we are in constant contact with Mayor Frazier and Executive Wallace. If you do have more concerns you'd like to get to us, they are a good conduit. Could I ask Mayor Frazier if you would conclude us, or anything else to say before we? Okay. Thank you all very much for coming.